The military and diplomatic channels, in fact, continue to be engaged as far as India-China is concerned and that aggressive flare-up at the line of actual control. Now, to talk about the situation, I'm joined here by the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Sangay. He is the elected, in fact, president, the elected leader of the Tibetan government in exile. Sikyang, many thanks for joining us here in this conversation.
Yes, thank you, thank you to be in conversation with you.
Right. If I could start with your own perspective and sense of how do you read the mood right now following, in fact, the violence that played out in Galwan Valley, the loss of lives of Indian soldiers, casualties on both sides. Do you see any signs of the situation de-escalating? How worried are you about the situation currently?
No, it's quite worrisome because, violence took place after several decades. But at the same time, not surprising because there was a standoff at Doklam in 2017, massive military buildup from the Chinese side, which led, the Indian side to, increase their presence there as well. Now in Ladakh, I think there were incursions, and physical what we call tussle at several places, and the one in Galwan Valley turned out to be the most violent, So it's very disturbing. But if you look at as a whole, I just feel that, this is a Chinese strategy of, coming into your territory of 10 kilometers, and then you have a talk de-escalation and they pull back 2 kilometers, and if you push harder they pull back 3 kilometers, and everybody will say, oh, there's de-escalation, there is peace, but actually the Chinese troops have taken over 7 kilometers of your land. So this has been their tactics that they use. So when they can enter in, and take over land, they do, and when they push back they go little back, but then they're there to come back again. So this, I think, is the trend. And then that's what you see in South China Sea and East China Sea and the Scarborough Island. They take over a small island, then they build a military airfield, and they have their military presence. And that's how step by step, but relentlessly, they will keep pursuing their expansionist policy.
So do you think then that, the salami slicing in a way, if I may refer to what you were talking about, that we've seen that Chinese aggression in East Asia, in South China Sea, where they have succeeded every time they've made these attempts. But here with this clash with India, India has been asking for restoration of status quo ante, the pre-existing situation, which was there in April. Do you think there's a serious chance of loss of territory here, given the developments?
Now, I don't know the specific details, but I don't have satellite maps to know how much of area is lost or not. But my point is they will use salami slice if it goes, and they will start chopping if they can, and if they'll take over if they can, So that's how they will approach. So ultimately, they want to be at net gain. So that's what we've been saying, study Tibet, what's happening inside Tibet. It was all there to see. One road connecting China to Tibet has become 100 roads connecting all the way to the borders of South Asia, Bhutan, Nepal, Arunachal, Ladakh. All these things are connected with the roads, from Tibet. Railway line coming from China to Tibet to border of Nepal, all the way to Lumbini, that's the border of Uttar Pradesh. Airfields and airports at the border of South Asia, all the neighboring countries being all built there. The intercontinental ballistic missiles, so military presence in Tibet. All these are part of the plan to, further expand and encroach and, enter into different territories. So military buildup on the other side in Tibet is gaining stronger and stronger.
Why now? How is the timing significant and relevant at a time when India and the world is grappling with the pandemic, in which, of course, China has had an important and a controversial role to play? It's been questioned. Is it really about what's happening inside China? Is it about Xi Jinping's, in fact, the vision of expansionism? How do you see the timing of events?
Timing events, one is long-term strategy. It's an expansionist policy. They've been expanding into Tibet, to the border of Tibet, and to all the neighboring countries of India and whole of Asia, all over the world. And this is their ongoing strategy that will continue, right? Now, it's true, they are facing a lot of external pressure. WHO is going to investigate the origin of coronavirus and maybe punish. That's the resolution. And the US is putting a lot of pressure on China. There's consensus in Washington, D.C. that China is a competitor, it's an adversary more than a friend or an ally. And European Union is coming to the same conclusion, and Japan and Australia included, right? So growing realization and the trust deficit of China. If you look at any poll taking place in any country at this very moment, the trust level, of China is very, very low. So yes, they have to divert some of these issues, hence, all this and taking place. At the same time, they're flexing their muscle and saying, look, we are the #1 in Asia, militarily most powerful, we can do what we want and no one can do anything about it, right? So all these messages are sent. Not one specific, multi-faceted message is sent to India, but also to all the neighboring countries of India, right? And to the Asia and to the whole world. So this is how they, play it. And one has to be very sophisticated enough to analyze and understand where this is coming from. Particularly, President Xi Jinping met Prime Minister Modi in Tamil Nadu in October. And they signed an agreement to say that, we will celebrate this year as the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relationship with 70 major events. And unfortunately, the most major event that took place in the year of celebration is the violence and death of Indian Jawans.
Right. Absolutely. That's a very, in fact, a stark reminder. But, Dr. Sangay, if I may also ask you that when you look at what is happening within Nepal, yesterday, in fact, a lot of Nepalese lawmakers, they also made representations that China has encroached upon their territory as well, and that territory needs to be taken back. Given what has transpired between Nepal and India over the past few weeks in areas, where Nepal has, of course, introduced and constitutionally amended its new map. What are your thoughts on Nepal at the moment?
Yes, Nepal, but generally our message is for, all the neighboring countries. What happened to Tibet? We got fooled and ultimately betrayed, right? Same thing could happen to you. So that's what we want to convey. So, there is border incursion and military intervention and expansionist policy, but there is this also softer approach, which is called elite cooptation, right? So they will pressure on politicians, they'll pressure on business people, they'll pressure on spiritual leaders, they'll pressure on journalists, they'll pressure on academics, you see. So they will try to generate or instigate a debate within a country. That happened to Tibet. So when the invasion and occupation was happening, there was some within the elite of the Tibetan circle was saying, maybe we should work with China, maybe we will have prosperity and the peace that the Chinese government is promising us, right? So some believed in the process, in that debate, which way to go, our country was fully occupied, and some of the same elite Tibetan leaders were sent to prison, even died or killed, and business people suffered, and even spiritual leaders, they suffered so much that 98% of Tibetan monasteries and nunneries were destroyed, 99% of monks and nuns were disrobed, right? Ultimately, even the promises that they were made to this elite were betrayed, and they landed up in prison, they suffered a lot, and they died. So this is our experience, and this what we want to share with all the neighboring countries of Tibet, including Nepal. So we want to say, please be careful.
Kathmandu has, vehemently rejected these allegations. We heard some comments recently by the Indian Army chief also alluding, in fact, in veiled remarks, alluding to the possible role that China is playing in the internal affairs in Nepal and also in this entire border dispute with India. But Kathmandu has been saying, it's not about China's role, but you do think that, when you talk about the elite co-optation, that there is a certain Chinese shadow out there that's playing a role.
Now, I can't, make comments on specific issues, right? Whether this is because of Chinese pressure or not. But having said that, as I say, overall, this is Chinese Communist Party's game plan. that they employed in Tibet, and then they succeeded in Tibet. They did in Xinjiang, they did in Mongolia, and they're doing all over the world, right? And it could be taking place in neighboring countries of India and Tibet as well.
Okay, just the last two questions then. I mean, when you look at the way forward now, there is that immediate, in fact, a situation of aggression in the LAC and the apprehensions, fears that we may not have seen the last set of violence as it played out in Galwan. So there are actually serious apprehensions about a possible flare-up again. So what can really the international community here, what should they be doing, countries like US and Russia, and India's own positions? Do you think it needs to recalibrate its positions when it comes to how it deals with countries like Taiwan or even the One China policy?
You should verify, then only trust. And you have to be very careful, and you have to be always vigilant and prepared. And that's the best way to go. So if you trust first, then you might get betrayed later. So as far as One China policy is concerned, it was developed specifically for Taiwan. That's how it originated, because this One China issue, but two interpretation, that's how they defined their relationship, right? So if Taiwan is saying that India should review One China policy, and Indian government should listen to what Taiwan is saying, why they are saying so? Because they are also under tremendous pressure. Even their election, even the Taiwan leadership said, were manipulated, right, towards candidates favoring the Chinese government. So this is the allegation, this is the debate that's going on in Taiwan. All this needs to be studied, right? Security law in Hong Kong, why at this time, right? And what's going on in Tibet, all this needs to be studied. I think so.
How should India recalibrate its position on Tibet?
First, one should recognize Tibet is a huge territory. It's almost 2/3 of India as far as territory is concerned. It's very rich in mineral resources, gold, copper, uranium, lithium. You just name any kind of minerals, it's there. And water, the rivers flowing from Tibet is it's the main source for almost whole of Asia. Yellow River to Yangtze, to Mekong, to Salween, to Brahmaputra, to Northeast, to Indus River, to Satluj River, all this flow from Tibet, and at the moment the Chinese government sits on top of the roof, roof of the world, and they control the water flow, they control the glacier melt. Even just by controlling water, they can affect the livelihood of millions and millions of India. So all this has to be taken into consideration, and say, China says Tibet is core-issue, and India should also say, yes, it's also core-issue for us, for environmental, for water, for geopolitical, for historical reasons, and we need to debate this, and let's look at solving this problem. Till you solve the Tibet issue and make it a zone of peace, make it a buffer zone between India and China, these border incursions and tragedies are likely to continue, unfortunately.
Okay, and one final question then, there's that big question that still looms large about what next after His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And China has been making claims about, Tibet's the 11th Panchen Lama who was forcibly disappeared. And in fact, China has been saying that he's now with his family, is a college graduate, has a stable job. Your thoughts?
If Panchen Lama is alive, as the Chinese government claim, then release him, let the whole world see him and get blessed by him. If his parents are saying he needs privacy, that's why he doesn't want to be seen, let his parents come out in the international forum, and in a free world, let them declare his status and whereabouts and well-being, right? Then only we can give some credence to what the Chinese government is claiming. Otherwise, no one sees them, no one hears from them. Is a Chinese spokesperson, claiming that he is doing well, is unacceptable. Now, China or the Communist Party of China might want to intervene in reincarnation process, but they are declared atheists. They don't believe in religion. They don't believe in dharma.
Right.
All they did was destroy our religion and destroy our monasteries and, disrobe our monks and nuns. So they have zero credibility as far as religion and spirituality is concerned. So if they interfere and recognize any Lama, Tibetans will not believe and follow that Lama, because spirituality comes from your mind and heart, not from your guns and money.
Dr. Sangye, before I conclude the conversation, one last comment that I would ask from you. Yesterday, we saw, in fact, the Arunachal Pradesh Chief Minister, Pema Khandu. He put out some tweets where he actually referred to the Bumla post on the Indo-Tibet border. How do you really look at this reference of the Indo-Tibet border coming into the parlance?
No, Pema Khandu is a very nice guy. He's a Buddhist, and he follows His Holiness Dalai Lama very closely. And I know him and his family members as well. And he lives at the border of Tibet. What he's saying is nothing new. He's saying what was true for hundreds and hundreds of years. People of Arunachal, the Mempas, they look at Tibetans, as, of common heritage, and they always, spoke and, have relationship with Tibetans on the other side. So, we say, Tibet, Indo-Tibet border. In fact, if you go to my Facebook, there's a photograph of, road sign which says Tibet 105 kilometers, and then this Indian territory is 5 kilometers and other territory 36 kilometers. So what he's saying is the truth. For hundreds and thousands of years, him and his parents and grandparents have always said Tibet on the other side.
You don't see this as a significant shift in a possible approach going forward in a possible, important thought out narrative?
See, I mean, he's speaking as a person from, Arunachal, who lived there, and his parents and grandparents and great-grandparents have always told him it's an Indo-Tibet border. And as a person in his individual capacity, he's saying, that's what I know, that's what I'm saying. So the Indo-China border is a recent invention. It's 60 years old, right? The Indo-Tibet border is, 1,200 to 2,000 years old. So, if you have to give some weightage to how old one is,
Okay, I appreciate you joining us. And like always, a pleasure to listen to you, Dr. Sangye. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you tuned in, thank you for watching the conversation here in New Delhi. This is Smita Sharma.